Welcome, listeners far and wide from Central America to Central Park. I'm Eirik Gislason, Associate Broker and Team Leader of the Excelsior team at Brown Harris Stevens, Master Certified Negotiation Expert and Instructor, and founder of Archway Partners Coaching, and your host of Shear Negotiation Mastery, the podcast bound and determined to reclaim and restore the good name of negotiation and unlock the door to value creation, win-win solutions, and the true power of collaboration and integrative negotiations. Now, Seth Godin once said, "Leadership is the art of giving people a platform for spreading ideas that work." But since this is a podcast about collaborative negotiation, I owe it to all of you to make this connection early. And here it is. The truth is, leadership and negotiation have been on remarkably parallel paths for several years, decades. Not to mention, in my opinion, there is no more important and relevant topic on influence and negotiation right now than leadership. But before we get into that, I want to welcome an incredibly special guest, our Chief Marketing Officer, Matt Leone. Thank you very much for joining me today, Matt.
Eirik, it's good to have. Just good to be here. I want to I randomly come on episodes every once in a while, more just to bring good news. And the good news that I share with you is that you're 11 episodes in now.
Yeah.
You're doing these every 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Your content is being viewed at numbers that we've never seen on this More network. You know, you're hitting near 60,000. You're like selling out MetLife Stadium with the amount of people you're getting them every week. I always like to throw that little term on a sports reference of attendance. But like, you're doing an incredible job. We want to first thank you for the time that you're putting into this show, and you see it in the numbers. But more importantly, the numbers that you're getting are attracting interest. And we had a great sponsor that came to us and asked to be the sponsor on your show. And it's a company called Stage and Fold. They're operating a lot in the city. They're doing unique staging where they take dense cardboard furniture and they put, interesting, additional elements on it to make it look like real furniture. And you could stage a home at like a fraction of the price of what it would be for traditional staging. So they came to us and they're like, Eric's getting good views. We want to sponsor his show. And you have an official sponsor now. So congratulations. And as my team together always looks forward to doing episodes with you because you come incredibly prepared. And I think your audience sees that too, is that I'm going to spend 30, 45, 60 minutes of my important day with Eirik because he's bringing it every time. And we want to thank you for that because it's always a partnership with these shows. And we know that the other side's got to bring just as much energy and thoughtful process to the exercise, and you do it. So keep up the great work, and we look forward to seeing this episode come out. We got a great guest that you're going to introduce. We love him. He's a new executive within our company, and he's crushing it.
Yes.
So it's going to be good to have him in this chair.
Oh, great. Well, I am personally so incredibly thankful to you for, we had multiple conversations about this idea. You knew it, saw it before I saw it. And so I can't thank you enough for continuing to believe in me enough to say, hey, you should really do this. You should really think about doing this, but then supporting the idea and helping me bring it to fruition with Ray and Lena with me every 2 weeks. And I'm so excited that the audience is reacting in the way they are to the content that we're bringing. And the fact that you and the entire leadership team, including the guest we have coming up, the entire leadership team is committed to the mastery of the craft, is committed to elevating agents and leadership at our company to do things like this and bring content that matters to our clients and to the general public. I'm thrilled. So thank you.
And I also look forward to probably next episodes, maybe even you announcing to your group that we're going to be looking at Apple Podcast rankings. And based on the numbers that you're putting out, you might be put in one of the top inside your category. If that happens, that's going to be a huge feather in your cap.
I can't wait.
Cool.
I can't wait.
All right, well, let's get this going. I'll get out of here. We'll get the experts in here, and you get going on your episode.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from our new sponsor.
Looking to stage a property, but on a tight budget and timeline? Stage with Stage and Fold. Stylish, lightweight, foldable, 3D printed cardboard furniture that looks real. Quick delivery and easy assembly. Staging starts at just $199 a month per room, and setup takes less than 30 minutes. Contact us today to stage smarter, sell faster, save thousands with Stage and Fold.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, welcome back. Well, that was very, very exciting, and thank you to Matt Leone for coming on and giving us a little bit of time. I'm thrilled to have Stage and Fold on as a new sponsor. But now let's get back into it, because this topic on leadership, as I mentioned, is incredibly important. And as I said before, there is no more important or relevant topic on influence and negotiation right now than leadership. Not long ago, relatively speaking, both leadership and negotiation were defined by hierarchy and control. Negotiation was dominated by power plays, threats, and bluster. One side wins and the other side loses. Leadership looked much the same, top-down authority where one person gave orders and everyone else fell in line and felt powerless. But although sometimes in very significant one-off circumstances that doesn't seem like it, the world has changed, and with it, so did the way that we lead and negotiate. In negotiation, the turning point came in the 1970s and 1980s. In 1981, the greats Roger Fisher and William Ury wrote Getting to Yes and reframed the field with principled negotiation. Suddenly, the focus shifted from positions to interests, from confrontation to collaboration, from dividing the pie to expanding it. Game theory reinforced the point, and we began to see that zero-sum thinking produced worse results than cooperation. Well, leadership has gone through a very similar or nearly identical transformation. The old command and control model has given way to something more adaptive, empathetic, and purpose-driven. Today's leaders succeed not by demanding compliance, but by building commitment. They prioritize empathy, authenticity, and vision. They cultivate adaptability and a growth mindset. Both fields, leadership and negotiation, have converged on the same truth. Success comes from collaboration. And with that historical context, I am excited, so excited for today's conversation. My guest, Ben Willig, is the Managing Director of Agent Growth and Strategy at Brown Harris Stevens and the founder of the Willig Collaborative and a well-respected real estate executive and leadership and performance coach. With nearly 2 decades of experience in New York City real estate, Ben has led many top-producing sales teams to the $1 million gross commission mark, coached hundreds of agents, and guided brokerages through pivotal moments of growth and cultural transformation. Prior to founding the Willig Collaborative, Ben served as the director of sales for 2 leading brokerages, including Elegran, an affiliate of Forbes Global Properties, where he played a key role in advancing the company's agent development platforms. Ben is also known for mentoring agents to think and operate like leaders and entrepreneurs. And perhaps the comparison made by many in our industry that sums up Ben the best is the Tony Robbins of real estate. Well, Ben, welcome. You're the perfect guest to be sitting in that chair for this topic, and I am thrilled to welcome you to Shear.
Thank you so much for having me. I was walking in thinking I was going to a podcast about haircuts. I just learned this is about negotiation.
Yeah, I got it nice and tight. My haircut is tight today. So yeah, this is a little bit. We do a little cutting.
We cut in to
Yeah,
what's real.
that's right.
No, in all seriousness, Eric, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I just appreciate you being a leader in this field and getting the information out. And I'm just so appreciative to be a part and be able to share and hopefully continue getting that good word out. So keep doing what you're doing, and I really appreciate being here. So
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'm a huge admirer of yours. I was thrilled to see you come over to Brown Harris Stevens, and I'm even more thrilled to have you here on Shearline, because this information, the content that we put out is really fits. I know a lot of what you believe and what you coach and teach in this industry. So glad you're here.
Yeah, core values are what it comes down to. So
Yeah.
We'll dive in.
We'll dive in. Speaking of diving in, let's dive in right now, because as I mentioned in the opener, both leadership and negotiation have evolved from models of authority and control to approaches grounded in empathy, collaboration, and trust. So do you agree with that change? And what do you think, if you do, what is it? Was it something generational, market-driven, or is it just something deeper about how people want to work together?
Great question. So I'm a big studier of history, and I think when you look back and you look at the human psyche and the human brains, we're operating off of multi-thousand-year-old operating systems, right?
Yeah.
How many of you
Right down here.
have upgraded your phone or anything in the last 2 weeks? I just got an update on my watch yesterday that it needed to go through and install an upgrade. But, as humans, when you actually go and look back for hundreds of thousands of years, if you think about the tribal nature of things, and I'm going to go back to this, I think, a few different, times with everything, is, we wanted to be around people that we trusted because that meant that we were safe. Yeah. So there's this idea of circle of safety, and I want to keep, kind of coming back to this because it's going to tie in, I think, to a few more things, both in leadership, how we negotiate, how we build that trust very quickly. And when you had neighboring tribes hundreds of thousands of years ago, if someone was coming in, you were probably a little suspect of someone that didn't really jive with your vibe, right?
Yeah.
And I'll credit Sarah Rada here, your vibe attracts your tribe. So, you wanted to see someone, very quickly you had to size up if you could trust them. Otherwise it would, attack your safety. So these things are at play in the human mind and human psyche. And we went through this very interesting, I think, time frame that you kind of talked about with that, control and everything like that, where we had an industrial revolution with lack of information, right? And so the combination of those, I think, is what led to and, caused or proliferated a lot of, I think, those things and deep aspects that are embedded in some of the human nature from, let's call it, mid-1800s to up to somewhere of the 1980s that you kind of spoke about there. So now we're in this information age. We don't have those same threats in our environment. So now let's take that, let's ground ourselves in that, and as we move forward, I think that's really, really important to be aware of and know, because it's going to tie into a lot of different aspects of what we got going here.
I love that. That's a nice deep dive into what we're going to talk about, and the context there is so important. That idea of our primal brain, which does not and has not changed. We have this our bodies are designed to, our brains are designed to keep us safe and to avoid fear, to avoid the unknown. So I love all of that, and I think that is a great jumping off point to where we're going. All right, so it's often said that people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. How do you see that?
So I think I'm going to talk more to how people follow certain leaders.
Okay.
And I'm going to, really speak more to, like a Bess Freeman on this one, right? Who's an amazing leader of Brown Harris Stevens. And what are people going to follow in today's day and age, right? It's someone who's going to support you. It's someone who's going to allow you to be your best, authentic self. It's going to be those people who, set the expectation and really allow you to live into that. So I think it's less of, leaving bad leaders, although, I'm sure everybody's had, a bad boss or someone they, did not enjoy, working for. The way have seen that transpire in real estate that I think is very specific for real estate agents and how that, matriculates into deals and manifests itself is most real estate agents or anybody who's building something, they start as the technician. Mm-hmm. They start being really good at that thing, right? And so for real estate agents, that's a deal maker. Yeah. You're going to find deals because honestly, for a lot of them, when they start off, they got to pay their bills.
Yeah.
Right? And you're attacking that basic primal fear, right? So now I just want to walk us through how this can, actually, what serves us at one point might not serve us at another. So you're a real estate agent, you're starting a company, you're getting really good at doing deals. You're a deal maker.
Yeah.
Right? And what I hear a lot with coaching top producers and folks over time is that, oh, well, I really need to do this part of the process, or this person needs to, in this position needs to do it like me. No one can do this as good as I can.
Right.
Right. And it might not be those exact words, but in some way there's that like, this is my special thing. So where does that go awry? If you have people in your organization and you don't give that autonomy, responsibility, the ability to make decisions, the ability to make mistakes, mm-hmm. you're never going to really truly grow in a leadership position because, when I talked about those bad bosses, if everybody thought of who that was, that person that came to mind, odds are more likely than not, it's probably that person that was sitting over you, telling you exactly how, right. things should be done. So if you look at like a Simon Sinek's golden circle, right, we look at the why, how, and what. Right. And so great leaders don't dictate to people the how you do certain things. So, now that said, even though we might not like that person in the leadership position, we've all experienced that. And they're probably well-intended because they really want to do a good job on that thing. They want to see you do a good job. But the way that manifests is not. Mm-hmm. So it's a little counterintuitive to our nature, to be able to do that. So, and then how does this all tie into negotiations, right? So I think in that circle of safety, right, whether you're in the leadership position, and I think there's some things to talk about with how your team represents you, or, if it's the people that are working for you in your business interacting with your clients, if they don't feel safe, how are your clients going to feel safe, right? And I think, think back to a time where, look, we've all probably gotten a stomach bug, right? Yeah. And if you've got a stomach bug, you're laid up in bed. And what is like the only thing you can think about with a stomach bug, right? Is like, how can I get better right now? Right. So the person who doesn't have their health has one dream,
right?
Getting better.
Yeah.
The person who has their health, you have but 1,000 dreams. Why is that relevant? Think about circle of safety, right? If you're feeling threatened in a negotiation, to your points of collaboration, if you're feeling threatened in your work environment, right, you start to get this tunnel vision like when you're sick where you can only focus on one thing.
Yeah. Removing
that thing that's not a good thing that's going on in your life, as opposed to being open to the abundance of, opportunities. So great leaders who, again, that circle of safety, they don't dictate the how. It's a hard habit to break. It's an easy thing to say, or it's a simple thing to say. It's not an easy thing to actually do. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit. But, for me, it's very inspiring to be in that environment that, great leader, someone like Bess, can really just allow people to thrive and be their best selves.
Oh, you did answer the question. I think I love your insights on that. And I love the fact that you bring in Bess because she has even said publicly that her leadership is more like a servant leadership position where she doesn't see herself as the boss. She sees herself in partnership with all of her agents who are out there and all of her employees who are out there all trying to row in the same direction and elevate the company together. And I think that when you inspire in that way, that's what happens. Everybody that's surrounding you feels like they're a part of something. And now we're all rowing twice as fast as we were rowing before we had that kind of a dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, or everybody's just rowing together, and then you go twice as fast.
That's
so
right. That's right. And sometimes that's all it takes, just having that same motion. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Ben Willig.
Residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
All right, we are back with Ben Willig, and I want to continue on with our questioning. Today's best leaders are defined by adaptability, authenticity, empathy, and purpose, as we mentioned at the top. Which of these qualities do you think makes the biggest difference in attracting and keeping the right kind of talent?
So I love this, not because those traits are the things that I think are what make a great leader and person, but because I think they get thrown around a lot and overused. And I'm a big person on what action can I actually take from these things. So empathetic. Well, what do I do to actually, to be empathetic? So I have a great worksheet, and all I've done is taken the Marine Corps leadership traits and principles and really put this into a way for people to think about it for themselves and make it actionable. And I kind of want to just read from a few that I think read to me that then actually give some context on what you can do and how you can be a great leader. What I like about everything that you mentioned is that, and same thing with the Marine Corps principles, is nowhere in there is a great leader a gregarious and the person who's a public speaker and doing all these things, which a lot of times we think of, as a leader, or some people do. But even the most, the smallest position on the team can be a leader with whatever they own and take responsibility for. So a lot of the points in the Marine Corps principles and what you mentioned have nothing to do with the person being at the head of the ship. They have everything to do with you owning whatever you are responsible for. So, for me, I'd like to actually, focus on a couple. There's 14 and 11 of these that, again, you can link to all of them in the sheet.
We will, yeah.
But, for me, the ones that stood out, and I love this because every time I do this, there's different ones that stick out to me, and I learn something going over it every time with people. So I want to focus on tact, integrity, and enthusiasm. So tact is, the definition of that is saying and doing the right thing in all circumstances. It preserves relationships and morale, especially during conflict or correction. So how do I deliver difficult messages without causing discouragement? So this one really sticks out to me right now, especially as a leader. You have to make decisions, or maybe there's something that goes on in a negotiation that's not the best information. And how do you still deliver that in a way that doesn't discourage people? So I was working with a top agent. I'll remain nameless for all these purposes. Big agent in the city, right? And like many great real estate agents in New York City, there's definitely a healthy amount of of ego there. And I found myself being challenged on this because I kind of said, I don't know that how I could necessarily get through to this person. So I really actually had to find some ways to deliver what I wanted to say, which was probably would have been much more direct with a little bit more tact. And the interesting thing is, someone I thought was very ego driven, and probably is, has actually come around and making enormous steps, which then improves how they act as a team leader. So that has been a really interesting one for me. integrity is honesty and strong moral principles. So integrity is the foundation of leadership and trust. It means doing the right thing even when no one is watching.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you chose honesty over convenience?
Yes.
And how do I model that? Right? So now we are actually, rather than talking about the generality of integrity, we can actually get to something actionable on, okay, doing the right thing when no one's watching. For me, having kids is one of the greatest blessings in life. And the question I asked myself when I had my son was, if I had to explain this to my son, would I be comfortable doing it? And it pretty much just answers everything I do separately in my, my life. And that's what's your bar for integrity? Enthusiasm's a fun one, because if you've met me, you've played around with me in workshops, I want to have fun. I'm going to bring my whole self. I'm probably going to have a lot of that enthusiasm. But enthusiasm is not just that, Chinatown Rolex of enthusiasms, because a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
But there's, having genuine excitement. So how do we actually define that? Because enthusiasm can be contagious. Positive energy can be contagious, and it elevates and can fuel performance. So, with all of that, it's how do you stay energized even when things aren't going your way, right? So in managing some of the things that you mentioned earlier that I've had to do, the turnarounds are ugly sometimes. There's some bad stuff, and you have to, even in the worst of times, stay enthusiastic and inspire that hope. Everybody can be enthusiastic and faux enthusiastic when things are going well.
Yeah.
But it's how can you have that when things aren't going so well that's going to inspire your team and the people around you. So again, we're kind of getting down to more of the, the definitions of this. And the other two, in terms of the principles that I really like, are set the example and seek responsibility and take responsibility, develop a sense of responsibility in others. You should also seek responsibility as well. So I can talk about both those as well, but, in speaking of the generalities, that we mentioned, or the things that get thrown around in leadership sometimes, I do think, and so I appreciate so much of what you're doing here in a longer form context, it's really helpful for people on how can we break that down into actionable things for me in my life and tools, to help me be a better leader in my day-to-day.
I think there's so much wisdom in that, and I love that. We will link that in the show notes. It's interesting when you talk about integrity and when you're talking about the tact, or that idea of honesty over convenience. When I've brought this to the show at least once before, but Stephen M. R. Covey wrote The Speed of Trust, and as we talk about leadership and negotiation, it really boils down to that element, that exponent, or that thing that really escalates success, is that speed of trust, is that idea of trust. And he talks about the four cores of credibility, and the two dimensions of trust are character and competency. And in the character piece is exactly what you're talking about. It is integrity, the idea of doing the right thing even when no one else is looking. And then also bringing in that idea of competency and being able to walk the talk, being able to, that you've been there before, that you have the results, that you can show the results. So that character piece is exactly what you just brought to the table. And I just love it, because trust is at the core, I think, of what makes a great negotiator, what makes a great leader, that ability to develop that trust, maintain that trust.
And if I could bring an example in of how, actually, because, we're talking about negotiations here. There's people who are listening who want to be better at deals. And there's an agent who I used to coach, like, how much does it actually cost someone by not being good at these things, right? So, I met someone who would churn through team members. Right. I actually, just to be fair, I'm still friends with them. I like them a lot as a person. I've worked with them a lot to try and, progress them along. But, there were a lot of things where people would just feel eroded in these categories. They would churn through people.
Yeah.
And, there was a situation, for example, like a huge townhome deal. And these people came, and they were someone who, again, kind of went along the lines of the more traditional, negotiation style they took. Like, I represent my seller, I'm going to be firm, authoritative, like all these things. And, there were simple things in the process. Like, the people want to just get in and view, and why aren't you going to show them? Right? Like, because you're representing your seller, you want to keep information, and do all these things. And then I watch on the other side, it just immediately erodes. You have a deal that's actually very close. We're talking over, $5 million, right, which is a sizable, is some people's year's worth of salary in most parts of the country, right? The commission on that. And you get a great deal, but the buyers, from so many things, lack of communication, lack of trust because of that, and the showings, not only did something not come to fruition, later on it had to go much lower than that. And I constantly watched throughout the career, this is someone who had all the smarts, all the brains, all the ability, all the work ethic, right? All of those aspects in place, but because of these certain leadership traits, they were never able, total potential to be $1.5, $2 million GCI producers, and could never, sometimes would crack 500K, then come back below. It really prevented a lot of, like, that's a huge amount of income, both in a very singular deal and a team. So just to put it in context for people, these things do have impacts on the actual deal, your business, and all these aspects. So.
Yeah, and not knowing them or ignoring them or acting as if you have this information or you've developed these skills. And I see this with agents that I coach, and I used to be a sales director as well, so agents that I manage. And sometimes the agents who have been in the business for 1, 2, 3, 4 decades are reluctant to look inward and understand that there is something else to learn, or perhaps that the business has changed, and that continuing education, and I'm not talking about just getting continuing education credit. I'm talking about...
I heard someone runs great negotiation classes. If you need
there's someone I know that does that. Absolutely.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug for Archway Partners Coaching. But yes, that idea that there is always room for ongoing learning, and that learning, that 1 day, 1 hour, 10 minutes of coaching or learning or continuing education could result in the gain or loss of tens or if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a month or a year in your business. And it is so true that people, they need to continue to grow and to look inward and see where they are, where they're falling down, where they're stepping up, where they're falling down for their team if they are a team leader. Because those patterns are patterns for a reason.
Yeah, and look, a lot of times it's a simple shift, right? Because some of those people want to learn, but if you're where your focus goes, your energy flows. So if you're focused on learning X amount in a certain area and more on this thing, but maybe not on these things that are your biggest restriction, I think that's where, like, a coach, any mentor, anyone from an outside opinion is going to see where to shift that up and maybe where to shift the awareness a little bit. The difference between a fly ball and a home run in baseball, 2 millimeters on the bat.
Right.
Ask any plastic surgeon, the difference between a supermodel nose and what people consider ugly, 2 millimeters in the nose, right? 2 millimeters are everywhere around us. So it's these simple little shifts in the right direction that can make huge differences. So
100%. All right, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dylan Pachulik, CEO of XL Real Property Management, New York's most trusted name in luxury property management since 2012. We specialize in managing individual apartments, townhouses, and rental buildings held by absentee owners. We maintain our properties with the highest standards of quality and service so that owners can choose a hassle-free approach to real estate investing. Rented or owner-occupied, we handle it all. For more information, contact us at xl-rpm.com.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
All right, and we are back. Now, self-awareness and integrity are two of the qualities that keep coming up in modern leadership. So how do those show up in your leadership style, and how do they connect to building credibility at the negotiation table?
Yeah, so it's funny because modern wisdom is not so modern. It's a lot of ancient things that I think keeps coming back, because I think Socrates was actually quoted saying the unexamined life is not one worth living, right? So I think he was probably one of the first people, but, people kind of bring these things back. We get very focused on, building things and, and doing everything. So how does all this tie into, let's talk some of the self-awareness, and what was the other one you wanted to hit on there?
Your leadership,
Just the leadership style.
And integrity, self-awareness and integrity.
So self-awareness and integrity, and how does that come through in, let's call it, negotiations and leadership. So self-awareness, I think you want to have a healthy bit of each of these, right? Because in today's environment, right, and speaking to that prehistoric brain, right, fear was something that kept us safe before. So when we start to understand this a little bit better, right, for hundreds of thousands of years, we needed to have that sense of things to be able to, survive. We don't need that anymore. So what happens? A lot of people in today's day and age get very triggered, a lot of times by simple things. You don't get a deal. Something doesn't go the way you want in your business. You're not getting something done. You're not meeting a deadline. Physiologically, what is happening in that person, both yourself and maybe people that you're speaking with, is actually very similar to something catastrophic. Like one of the people who introduced the Marine Corps principles to me, it's been very interesting because as he goes through the business, there's certain aspects of not getting a deal where his body goes through the same reaction as when he was knocking down doors in Fallujah.
Yeah.
Right. And so, the human body is a very interesting place with that. So top performing people and people who would be the best in their community are going to have that nature of, that coming into play. So when you're dealing with top performers, top real estate agents, you're at that negotiating table or any of that type of thing, paying attention to, hey, are there things going wrong? Are there things going wrong in their business? What's their physiological, going on here? And also that self-awareness for my own being. Can I have a healthy enough, bit of it to take a look back on every interaction, analyze and actually get better? Or is it actually something where it becomes, just debilitating, right? I'm thinking about that thing too much. I'm becoming too fearful, and a very unhealthy amount of, self-awareness. So a lot of people I find either have way too much where it becomes debilitating, or because they don't even want to go there, they don't want to look at that at all, and they can't actually get better and actually have that growth mindset and improve. So physiologically, when you're speaking with someone at a negotiation table, like, having that good level of trust, having that relationship with anybody you're interacting with, you're going to then get to see where are they on that spectrum, right? Because again, how healthy are they feeling? That they're open to a bunch of possibilities, open to discussing, new ideas and solutions, right? And if you're living with integrity, you're going to breed and people are going to feel that trust because you're not trying to prove anything. You're just flowing and you're being one with yourself. So I think when you know that you have integrity, you're that. If you feel like you have something to prove to people, people can smell that from a mile away. So, and then it's going to be very hard because people are going to put their guard up and it's going to hinder a negotiation, hinder what you want to do with your team. So all of these are, slightly nuanced, but again, going back to those prehistoric animal instincts, how things have progressed to where they are now. And it does take a certain amount of intuitive nature, which is good news for everybody because it means that AI is not going to take that away anytime soon.
Right, exactly.
So,
I think that we're far away from AI being as self-aware, not only aware of itself, because I think what I love about what you just brought in is there's one thing to know what's going on within your own mind and your body. Physiologically, psychologically, what is happening when something good, something bad happens to you? Are you feeling that worst case scenario? Or are you going through something that's physiological because your primal brain is telling you that the world is falling apart when it's just something small that you can get over in an instant? There's one thing to have that self-awareness for yourself, but then when you actually have it, when you know how to do that with yourself, then to be able to look across the table, whether it's your counterpart in a negotiation or your client in a negotiation, and understand what's going on with them. And be empathetic, and this is where empathy, I think, helps. You talked about how does empathy kind of come into play. Being able to then look at someone else, see what they're going through, and understand that that is going to help you in your path to getting to the solution, getting what you want, getting a win-win solution that involves understanding their awareness.
And so I want to, can I zoom in on that
Zoom
for a
in.
second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So because empathy gets talked about, and there's a lot of tools with that for people to find it in different conversations, I see certain salespeople, almost overuse this, right? And there's that, where that intuition comes into play is knowing when, seeing it, feeling it, and knowing sometimes not to go in on it.
Sure.
Right. And, I'll give an example, right? Just more of a team management leadership example, but this could be deals, it could be anything. And one of my previous friends, come in, I'm meeting a new agent, high performer, huge potential. I could tell that she, from our first conversation, it was going to take her a year to open up to me because she, did not trust. And I knew, and I could feel that empathy that there were things beneath that surface that we needed to go to. However, if we went there right away, that would have broken the trust. I would have never been able to get to a deeper level with that person. So, did it take a long time, and might everybody have to make that decision? Do you always have that level of time in a transaction? No. But, sometimes knowing the tool, not overusing the tool. Like I had a salesperson recently with me that, a vendor, in the industry who, has a new thing and coming out and pull out all those things. And it just, I don't trust them already,
right?
Because I see that being, overused. So it's one thing to have the empathy, know the tools, but also knowing when to use it is, I think, a really key critical component, and trust that intuition, right? AI is great because you give it a path and it'll start going, building down that path in ways that make you way more efficient. But that human intuition is then saying like, oh, okay, we're going here, but I need to jump to this whole totally different area now.
Yeah.
So, I think that's an important element there.
I will say this. I think that what you just described of knowing when to use the tool perfectly describes what empathy is. When you have that sense of empathy, when you understand what strategic empathy is, well, that's the whole point, is you know exactly when to use it, when not, when to bring out like an empathetic conversation, or when to say, you know what, I'm going to hold on this. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what someone's willing to share, what they're not willing to share. That's your empathy at play. And when you're skilled at that, it's a magical tool, and knowing when to use it is exactly right.
Yeah. It's the tool and knowing when to use it that really make the complete picture. Absolutely.
Totally agree. All right, so collaborative negotiation is all about uncovering interest, creating value, and building trust. So how do those same principles apply when you're leading a team as a director of agent growth, as well as when you're coaching in your capacity with the Willig Collaborative.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's hand in hand with your podcast, man.
Right,
collaborative negotiation, collaborative, collaborative coaching. And as I was just talking before the show, I learned from I've learned a ton from you, and actually taking some of your, classes in the past. I've learned from the people that, that I've coached. And, I think one of those overused tools when you're in a leadership position, right? And this could be, again, client, team. I've had all these circumstances before, right? Is, we talk a lot about listening with 2 ears, one mouth, and I've heard that repeated a number of times. When you're in a leadership position, one of the leadership traits and principles is you have to be able to make decisions.
Right.
And, sometimes those are also going to be maybe unpopular decisions. And you can't necessarily always take, if you put 5 people in a room and ask for their opinion on something, you're usually going to get 5 different opinions. And it's very inefficient to run things by committee like that. That's why co-op boards are the way they are, and we are able to make the money that we're able to make because they're very hard to navigate. So teams should be a little bit more efficient. You need to listen. You need to make sure people feel heard, right? Whether that's your client, whether that is an agent, and then how do you do that again in a tactful way to still get to where the right place is and where you need to drive that ship to. So that ability to, and look, along the way, you have to do it genuinely. And I think a great piece to that is curiosity. Yeah. Right. And checking your own self at the door. Something I love from the health field, I don't know if it's Peter Attia, talks about this, is strong convictions loosely held. Right. So as you're leading and you're listening and you look, even a lot of the things I talk about today, I'd love to be challenged and be proven wrong on them. I've seen them play out a number of times that I have enough strong convictions on them, but I'm also, I'll loosely hold those and be willing to oh, you know what? I saw this person do it a lot, differently and more successfully. Maybe we need to change this type of thing up. So, all of this comes into play. And again, it's a lot of soft skills. It's a lot of, again, self-aware, analyzing, coming back to it. So, but people respect that when they see it. There's a vulnerable nature of that, which, again, talking about vulnerability, which I know has been talked about a lot in leadership circles. Yeah. It makes people feel, I think, more empowered with what they're doing.
I can't agree enough. And I think that's really, really beautifully said. Well, I'm going to go on from here. We're going to go on to what we call the lightning round. And well, there's actually some theme music. So, so we need to cue the theme music. All right, ready?
I love it.
So these are questions I really want to get your insights, your thoughts. They don't have to be one-word answers, but this is just to get to know Ben a little bit more beyond the conversation we just had on leadership and negotiation. So
I take my shirt off at weddings. What?
Well, I can take that question off the list. Okay, tell us more. All right. So, wow, this is going to be a boring question compared to what you just answered unprompted.
Super boring. Go ahead.
All right. So, you're an athlete. I know that you're a competitive athlete, have in the past and still are. Can you recall a specific workout, an event, or challenge that pushed you to a point physically that you nearly gave in or gave up?
Yeah, I have 4 of them.
Oh.
So I love pushing myself to this limit. I'm a big believer that if you have small, challenges on a regular basis, you're more equipped to be able to handle the larger challenges. So I'll rattle them off right now. Ironman Jones Beach in 2024, Hartford Marathon, there was one where I set a PB, Philadelphia Marathon where I ran it and had COVID, and then a Niagara Ultra, and then also 4 days in high school football. So all of these, Philadelphia Marathon, I don't know how my body just told me that I was fine when I was clearly sick the morning of. So weird thing to overcome that, and then to find and test a day or two later that I actually had COVID. And ran it where my whole body was cramping up and just telling me to stop. Yeah. And I couldn't even walk at one point of the race, let alone still finish out the run, and ended up still getting my personal best ever. It's still my best marathon time. Niagara Ultra was the only race, racing at 80 degree and sunny that I've ever actually had to stop but still finish. So, I was incoherent. Calling my wife at one point, trying to tell her to bring water to me. Ironman, I crashed my bike on, but still got up and continued to finish, all bloodied, down the side. And had to go to the medical tent after. So I've had a lot of instances, like this, and I'm a sick freak because I love all of them, and I'll probably continue to do some more. So
I was gonna say okay, so after all of that, you just read. I was like, what the hell are you doing? I'm just kidding, but it is amazing to know how powerful our brains are to convince us that we can or cannot do something. And when you're in that mindset, despite the fact that physically you should not be able to do this, And your brain is saying, no, you got this. You can do it.
Yeah, I believe in no limits and trying to push yourself to find, where you can break through what you think your limitations are is just one of the most fun things for me in life. So now I run towards it as opposed to run away from it. So yeah.
Amazing. And now on that sports theme, I know you played football in college. What is team sport? Because you're talking about marathons and Ironman. That's more of an individual sport. But what have team sports taught you about leadership?
A lot. One of the undercover things that I think is maybe just not talked about as much, because my first 2 years of college football, we won. We were coming off of a couple winning seasons. I started all 4 years. We had 31 game win streak. We were on Sports Center, a couple championships, and then we had a coaching change. And I learned through that. And we lost a couple games my last 2 years, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a huge deal coming off of what we had there.
Yeah.
And you saw that I talked about earlier, even the smallest, the most insignificant person on the team, from a stats perspective, could have an impact on the entire picture and direction. Because if there was a contingency of people who, they weren't the starters, they weren't the second string, but they muddled with creating, a lack of buy-in for the direction that the leader was wanting to go. And it didn't allow us to fulfill our full potential. And eventually that coach went on to go have some undefeated seasons of their own once they had their guys in and who believed in their system and process. Yeah. So there's something on a ship called a trim tab. So no matter what position you are on a team or in an organization, you can have an impact on the entire direction of which way the ship goes. So you're only as good as your weakest link. And it's really every player is very important when you're running a team. So
I love that. That's a great answer. All right. And before I ask you where people can find you and learn more about everything that you're doing, one more question. Now, you have a longer commute than most to work. I have this vision of you this morning at Grand Central, in the Hertz commercial, running over and jumping over bags as you came up here to the studio. But you have a longer commute than most. What do you do to fill your time during that commute?
Yeah, and it's longer if you ask my wife than if you ask me. I always try and make it shorter in my mind, but we're different in that way. So I think be your authentic self, live into yourself and what you're doing. There's a lot of things I do to do the things that you mentioned earlier that are very regimented. For me, that train time, I was very excited about this morning, so I spent a lot of time, preparing some of the thoughts for this. There's other mornings where I want to check out. And I check out, or there's something else that's important and fun, and I will, I'll work on that. So that time for me is kind of where are my priorities at? Don't underestimate the power of being with your own thoughts and being able to truly check out from all the stimuli coming at you in your email inbox and those aspects, because then you come back to the truly important things much more fresh, much more on point. So today was this. I was very excited and appreciate you having me on. And I wanted to deliver a lot of value for anyone who listens. But that area for me is not regimented, and I really just try and be, true to myself and what I'm feeling. And I think there's a lot of ways that can relate to different aspects of life for people.
Well, I'll speak for our audience when I say I'm glad that you had a long commute this morning, because this has been an amazing conversation.
Great.
So thank you for being here. So where can our audience find out more about you, about your coaching, about everything that you're doing and putting out into the world?
Yeah, you're going to hate this, but I'm going to basically say I'm like the Trader Joe's of leadership coaching. All
right.
Trader Joe's does not advertise. So I work with a lot of
$3 wine.
I have a lot of top producers. I don't drink nor $3 wine. But a lot of top producers I coach. Honestly, if people are truly interested, they can literally at this point just email me. There'll be more things that probably come out on LinkedIn and things like that. But I live a very full life, which you could follow me on Instagram and see that. And I really focus more of my energy and efforts on the few people that take action, make a big, difference. So I'm not trying to be everything to everyone. Yeah. There will be times to get more of that information out, but the people who work with me know. BenWillig@gmail.com. If you actually really want to get in touch with me, just email me. and we'll have more of a conversation. So
Beautiful. That's pretty easy.
yeah.
Ben, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to give our takeaways here for today. And what this conversation with Ben highlights is that leadership and negotiation aren't just professional skills. They're human skills, and both have been on a journey away from power and authority towards something deeper, something more sustainable. Collaboration built on trust. Leadership today isn't about commanding from the top. It's about creating the conditions where people feel safe to share ideas, take risks, and contribute their bests. That's collaboration. And negotiation at its best mirrors that, not just extracting value, taking a transactional approach, or using manipulation to gain an edge, but creating value together, understanding the other side's interests and getting out of them what you want and need, but doing so while adequately satisfying their needs as well. Both disciplines thrive when people are respected, heard, and empowered. And trust is the glue, as we talked about. Without it, leaders may get compliance from their people, but never commitment, never loyalty. Negotiators may get a signature, but never a strong relationship, never a second deal, a referral, or perhaps not even a closing. But when trust is present, everything changes. Teams align more easily, negotiations move more smoothly, and the outcomes last longer because people see the value in them. So here's what it comes down to. Leadership without collaboration is fragile. Negotiation without trust is short-lived. But when you combine leadership, collaboration, and trust, you create something enduring. Teams that are loyal, partnerships that are resilient, and outcomes that are greater than the sum of their parts. And that's Shearline for today, everyone. As a reminder, you can support this show by following us, subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to getmorenetwork.com, and there you can check out all of the amazing shows on the More Network, including past episodes of Shearline. You can find me all over Instagram at archway.partners, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Eirik the Expert. You can contact the Excelsior team at BHS by going to bhsusa.com, and you can connect with my company, Archway Partners Coaching, by visiting archwaypartnersinc.com, where you can find out more about our brand new Mighty Network community with modules, training, courses, weekly group coaching, and monthly Q&As, all at your fingertips. So remember, there's a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lifts the pins and creates the shear line. Until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. We'll see you next time, everybody.